Here you have a chart made by the Rumi Trust in 1997. They published a report called Islamophobia, a Challenge for Us All. Now there is a lot of controversy here because many scholars say Islamophobia and anti-Islamism doesn't exist. Well, if Judeophobia or Jewphobia exists, then Islamophobia may exist too. If anti-Islamism doesn't exist, how come anti-Judaism or anti-Semitism exists? So if that is possible, this is possible too. What is in the name anyway? In this chart, you will see that the exclusion from employment, from management and responsibility, and from politics and government, for example, are part of Islamophobia. Discrimination too, in employment practices, in provision of services, which includes education and health. And in this chart, you'll see that they say that prejudice in the media, in everyday conversation, and violence, physical assaults, vandalizing of property, verbal abuse, and so are part of Islamophobia. I'm partly agreeing with this explanation. This is an interesting overview of the closed view of other people of Islam, which can also be contrasted by an open view of Islam. So the distinctions made by the Rumi Trust in their report, the first one is monolithic and diverse. The closed view would be that they see Islam as a single monolithic block, static and unresponsive to new realities, which is a very common accusation these days of Islam. The open view is that you could argue that, and that is what Muslims do, of course, they say Islam can be seen as diverse and progressive with internal differences, debates and development. And I kind of agree with that one. The second is separate and interacting, which the closed view thinkers say Islam is separate and other. They don't have any aims or values in common with other cultures, and B, not affected by these cultures or people, and C, they are not influencing them. The open view argument is that Islam sees as interdependent with other faiths and cultures and have certain shared values and aims, and is affected by them and is enriching them. So that's a contrasting view right there. The third distinction is the inferior and different distinction. A close view would say where they see Islam as inferior to the West, as barbaric, irrational, primitive, sexist, very right on target, because that's really the distinction that has to be made, contrasting to what the Muslims say about it, or people who are friendly toward Islam. They would say, listen, Islam is not violent. We see Islam as an actual or potential partner in joint cooperative enterprises and in the solution of shared problems. You go as far as saying Islam is not violent, Islam is not aggressive, Islam is not threatening, Islam is not supportive of terrorism, and it is not engaged in a clash of civilizations. The third distinction is the distinction of inferiority and difference. The closed view is to say Islam is inferior to the West, barbaric, irrational, primitive, and sexist. That's quite right on target, because a lot of people, a lot of critics of Islam use those terms to describe what is wrong with Islam. The open view would be saying it's distinctly different, blah, blah, blah. But I don't really see a very good argument there. My argument would be to say Islam is not inferior to the West. It is particular to their own culture. You cannot compare an apple and a pear, well, although they are fruit. Islam is not barbaric. If Islam is barbaric, you have to say that everything else is barbaric too, including the United States with its false war on Iraq, and so on. And to say that Islam is sexist is to generalize an entire religion on what? And an entire 1 billion population of some verses or some hadith that you put or take out of context. The fourth is the enemy and the partner distinction. The closed view say Islam is violent, Islam is aggressive, and Islam threatens, it is supportive of terrorism, and it is engaged in a class of civilizations. The argument here given by the Rimini Trust is not really powerful enough. I think I would say Islam is not violent. Islam is not aggressive. Islam is not threatening. It is not supportive of terrorism. And it is not engaged in a class of civilization. Not. And why not? Because what you can portray as a generalization is false. Of course, there are violent, aggressive threats and so on coming from one person, a few persons, or a few people, a group, a few groups, or maybe an entire regional force. But to generalize an entire population of 1 billion people is outright ridiculous. So the 6, 7, and 8 point is not so much of an interest here. You will see here my view of Islamophobia and Anti-Islamism versus the other one, this one. Coming back, you'll see here that I have distincted here in the elliptical form, the forms of Islamophobia, which I see discrimination and exclusion being part of. The other two, violence and prejudice, are not part of Islamophobia. Because, in my opinion, these two exist. Islamophobia and anti-Islamism exist. But an Islamophobe is not particularly or necessarily anti-Islamist. So, in my opinion, exclusion and discrimination, the soft form is Islamophobia, and the harder form is anti-Islamism. This way you make a distinction between the ones who say, listen, I cannot give you a job, or I cannot give you an internship. That kind of people may exclude ladies who wear a hijab, a veil, because they may not feel comfortable with it, or because of it. On the other hand, it's not really hateful, it's not really violently against that person. It's just something of an discomfort. And that can be translated into a kind of phobia, because it is not based on knowledge or facts maybe, but it's not really a very strong emotional issue. Anti-Islamism is very strong. You will be prejudiced. You will say, listen, you are close minded, you are sexist, you are a threat to our civilization, and so on. Violence is even worse, and to make that distinction is very important. From today onward, please do.